I'm just missing you and Dwayne. Like Rob, Kelly, Joe Pat all just did them within 2 minutes upstairs at my desk, and I think
Right then?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I got a phone call.
we read.
Oh, that's
So I need to
just sign there. Yep.
sign there. All right. There you go.
Thank you.
Make sure your microphone is the same. Well, no. I'm going to go buy a new one, probably $2,200, $2,300, $2,400. Where'd you see Big Eye at? Big Eye is like the town crier.
Well, he had to say something. We were Matt and I were giving you. We were like, so you got a car and a truck.
Hey, can y'all see us okay?
Yeah.
Well, let the record reflect we can see you all too well. No, we are going to call this meeting to order. So good to see our colleagues that are in Louisville attending a professional conference. This is the July 27th, 2023 Fiscal Court meeting, and we're calling this to order. I would appreciate everyone being here, and I'd like to ask you all to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Let us pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. Ms. Hamilton, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Hostetler.
Present.
Mr. Jones.
Here.
Mr. Wallace.
Here.
Mr. Corman.
Present.
Mr. Ellison.
Here.
Mr. Pratt.
Here.
Mr. Livingston.
Here.
Mr. Culbertson.
Here.
Judge Covington.
Present. Thank you very much. Our first item to consider next is our minutes from our previous meeting. Are there any questions or comments related to those minutes as presented?
Motion to accept.
Motion from Mr. Corman, second from Mr. Jones. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Number 5, transfers shared via email. Any questions or comments regarding those transfers as presented?
No questions.
Motion?
Motion.
Mr. Hostetler, second from Mr. Ryan Pratt. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Bills and hand checks. Road fund general $300,000. Jail fund to general $100,000. And then I'm looking at we've got 2 others. Branch Center Carroll, $31,491, and then Pinnacle Capital, $129,769. Any questions about those?
$700.69.
60. Okay, make sure that record is accurate.
What was the Pinnacle? I see the amount.
That is for the vehicle leases. We're getting a better rate from that CAECO option.
Okay.
Michelle, would you like to comment on that? Michelle has
This is for Pinnacle Public Finance, which is the lease agreement from the previous leased vehicles. We haven't started the CAECO yet.
So,
And then the Branch Center Carroll, that's for their work on
yes,
design.
yes.
Make a motion.
Motion,
Second.
second. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Let the record reflect that Joe Covington, David Livingston, Rick Hostetler completed training unit hours. Number 8, let the record reflect that the salary schedule for fiscal court employees was shared with the magistrates and also local paper. Any questions about that? We'll move to number 9, Amen House grant contract. And that was shared by email. Cam, do you have any questions or comments?
No, the court, I believe, adopted a resolution on January the 13th authorizing Judge Covington to move forward with this, but they did send us a contract to review, and that was with respect to a $750,000 grant from the state to the Amen House. In addition to that, there is a legally binding agreement that they sent to review. I've read over both of them. They both seem fine. So,
and there's no commitment from the court.
That's correct.
The Amen House will commit $112,500. This is a CDBG, and it's for their distribution facility. So, any other questions or comments, and would there be a motion? It's not a resolution. It's just a contract that we share.
Sort of a follow-up.
It's a follow-up. We passed a resolution earlier.
Right, motion.
Got a motion, second. Any other questions or comments?
Will they send us reports on some of the stuff that's in that contract that, and I was trying to pull it up on my phone.
The Amen House, you mean?
Yeah. Like making sure they're in compliance with how they're
I'm
spending
sure they
the
would
money.
do that. Well, it seems clear they're supposed to do that with respect to the state.
Yeah, Bluegrass Egg keeps the form too.
Okay.
Logan Hart is kind of like
He'll make sure we're updated, so I'll
Yeah.
make sure those get sent, any requests that y'all have.
Okay.
yeah. But he'll help make sure that any documentation that's required will be submitted. Is that fair to say?
Yes, sir.
And they follow all the governmental regulations. They can put it out for bid and all that stuff.
And they have to sign an agreement as well.
This really probably doesn't pertain directly to what we're going to be voting on, but do they have a time frame yet of when they're going to? Because I know they're still.
My understanding is MLS Power Sports, I saw an invitation to a groundbreaking that's very soon. So they'll complete that facility, that construction of that facility, and then Amen House will take possession of that.
Will you send us that invitation to that
Yes.
groundbreaking? Cool.
I sure will.
Yeah. So then that's coming soon then, probably. Yeah.
I don't
Just
know,
wondering.
I don't know how long the facility will take to build.
And then move and.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be a year plus.
Yeah.
So let me get back in my head clear. Did we have a motion and a second? And then did we have any other questions related to that agreement? Would all those in favor please say aye? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. That leads us to ordinance 2308, second reading record service. I do want to share that Cam had one conversation with Mr. Finley. I think Mr. Finley is here. And from that email, Cam sent me an email, and I have some concerns that were shared, or questions, kind of, and I want to read that before, here we do, go. Before, and then I'll invite anyone in the audience to speak to any questions or concerns before we read the summary. Mr. Finley's concerns that he shared with Mr. Culbertson. You were playing golf when I called you back. You were at the sheriff's office scrambled. The concern about any unpaid tow bills that in the sheriff's office not paying those, that was a concern you had. And I'll let you if you want to come on up and then if you want to just list what you had, but I wanted you to know that we were going to talk about this before we took it up.
Okay, I have no issue with the sheriff's department no longer paying for the fatality or investigation cars going to their lot.
Okay.
I know there was some miscommunication before. The sheriff's department told me to send them bills. When we went there, I think that it's changing. I have no issue with that at all.
Okay.
The other concern I have is just the way the ordinance is wrote. I think it'd just be easier and more clear. It says we can charge mileage after we hit city limits and go into the county. And we could start charging the loaded mile. I think it'd be easier if we said 5 free miles, because it kind of gives a radius. Because the city limits is kind of unclear where it is, and it's hard to keep up with it when we start charging. You understand what I'm saying?
No,
Okay.
like, you're defining it with a number.
Yeah, instead of, because from my understanding, the city is more, it's longer than it is wider. So if we go east or west, we actually charge more compared to north or south.
Would that be a substantial change if the court wanted to consider that?
If the court wants.
It's just-
No, I think that's something I.
Because normally, like the AAA contracts, the Gero Swoop that we sign with towing companies with like AAA and all them, that's how they word it. They said 5 free miles and then you start charging mileage.
Okay.
So I think it's just clear.
My understanding, yeah, certainly the court we can do that if they want to. I think that was maybe something you did raise.
Yeah.
With Lieutenant
Yeah.
Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
And,
But I'm happy with the way
you
it's
reached out
wrote.
to
If
like
y'all don't
5
wanna
different
change it.
companies and got 5 different proposals, so this is kind of what he came up with.
Yeah.
I totally understand.
Yeah.
He's trying to mitigate through all of it.
Yeah.
And you know, to credit to Lieutenant Johnson, I felt like he tried to do his due diligence speaking with our
He did an
our
excellent
providers.
job.
Yeah.
Excellent job. I have nothing against him.
Okay, David Livingston. Yes, sir.
We were trying to figure out what the guys' names were that were in the balcony for the Muppets. And that's who we would be tonight. But we both agree with what he's presenting, that the first 5 miles free would make total sense.
Okay, well, thank you for that input. Bert and Ernie is who I would compare y'all to. But do you want to? I mean, how do we handle making this change? I mean,
Both with the changes.
and then Mr. Finley, is there anything else that you wanted to bring up?
So another thing, I believe, if we get the call, I believe that my company should be on scene, that we cannot farm it out. Now, if we need help, of course, we've got to call in other companies to help. But I believe that, like, if I get a call for tractor trailer turned over, I need to be there. My company.
If you're the rotation call.
Yeah, if I'm the rotation call, I'm the one on scene handling it. It's my call. And if we need to call for help beyond that, if I need 3 heavy-duty trucks and myself only has 1, then we can call in an extra hand. But it's my scene. I'm in control of it, and I'm physically there.
Well, I don't
Go ahead,
understand.
Mr.
I
Pratt.
don't understand, like, what the issue is. What's happening now that you want that in there for? That's what I'm not.
I believe, like, if it's my rotation call, that I should be the one on scene handling it.
So is someone else possibly
somebody else,
now
like,
not
don't-
showing up?
Yeah.
So like you would make a call to another company and try to sub it out?
Yeah.
Or-
I don't believe that's right. If I
Okay,
get the call,
I didn't know. I'm like Brian. I was trying to figure out.
Yeah, I understand. So
What
if
I
get
think
call-
is, like, if you get the call and you can't answer it, the next person in the rotation ought to get the call.
Yeah, correct.
But, so like right now, if dispatch calls you and they say, hey, we have a wreck, we need you to come. What's happening where that's not happening? So like, you're saying,
So
okay, and
basically,
you're calling.
this is preventing me from saying, hey, dispatch calls me and they're like, hey, we got a tractor trailer turned over in the interstate. I pick up I say, yeah, I accept it. I hang up the phone. I call another company. I'm like, hey, go handle this for me. Call me when it's done. I roll over, go back to bed. I don't think that's right. I believe I should get up and be the one on.
Because that keeps them on the rotation, right? I mean, you need financial benefit from doing that.
Oh, yeah, I mean, yeah, I could get a kickback from the company I call, get a percentage of it or whatnot, but I believe that we should be, me or somebody from my company,
On the site.
on site.
So I have David Livingston with a comment, and then Mike Hennigan.
So my question is, what I'm gathering for this, if I read between the lines correctly, is that who could possibly handle typical passenger cars, but could not handle an 18-wheeler being turned over in the interstate in the rotation.
Mike, you want to handle that because you're out there on the interstate quite a bit.
So the answer to that question is there are companies that have divested themselves of bigger equipment and are subbing out the work. So Mr. Finley is absolutely correct. If he's the first name on the list for rotation, he or one of his representatives should be there bringing the proper equipment. And, if it's too big, we can, get extra equipment. But we shouldn't call, Joe's towing service and then get John's towing service come, as the one that responds because they're the ones that have the bigger equipment. So, we didn't put it into the ordinance, but it makes sense that, it's just a simple line that if your company calls, a representative from your company is on that incident.
David?
So in that scenario, should we not have two different call lines on who responds to it? Because there's no use in calling a company that cannot respond directly.
We do have two complete rotations. There's a rotation list for passenger vehicles up to a certain weight, and then a second call list with different companies that can handle 26,000 pounds and over. And a couple of those companies can straddle the line, but if we have an overturned semi, we need a truck big enough to lift that back up. You can't just show up and drag it down the road and hope that eventually it sets itself back.
Rick Hostetler?
So, reading further between the lines, so what I'm hearing is when dispatch calls ABC towing, ABC has to say, okay, I'm sending a driver.
Right.
Or I can't take the call. Go to number two. That eliminates the middle guy.
Right.
Is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
So ABC towing can't say, yeah, I got it, and then call DEF towing after they hang up.
Correct. Yeah,
So-
we're looking for a specific company to roll up and help us with whatever we're trying to clear.
Whoever answered the call, and whoever's next on the list,
Yeah.
they get the call and they say, I'm coming.
Right. And then dispatch calls us on the radio and says, this company will be there,
ABC's coming.
and their estimated time is 30 minutes, 45 minutes, whatever, and we make that decision, is the company capable of doing the work, and is their ETA, something we can
Suitable.
live with?
So David Livingston, did your question get answered?
Well, Judge, I guess the biggest thing that I'm trying to avoid in this whole scenario is to end up with a monopoly of one company being the only option.
I think we've got safeguards built in on that list
Right.
for that to not happen.
Is there ever a scenario, Mike, that where, like when we had the big snowstorm, or that is a possibility where somebody is called out and they're next on the rotation? You've got so many calls out, and there's a tow truck, there's 5 of them out, and they get another call and they cycle back through. They have to call somebody else.
No, if they're out working and they get back on the top of the rotation, they have to pass on that if they're not able to respond. But we put that wording into the ordinance, saying during times of emergency, like a snowstorm, we're going to go through our rotation to the best of our ability. But if we call all 5 of the companies and they all turn us down, then we can move into an outer ring to get to Frankfurt, Cynthiana, whatever, without the record companies getting, feeling like they've been left out. Because we have to get the roads open. We have to, take care of business. And if they're all rocking and rolling, we move on. But on the 23rd of December, heavy wrecker ETA was between 11 and 13 hours. And so it just became unreasonable. We had to start reaching out to other communities.
So back to Mr. Finley's original request comment. Does any court member want to?
I just have a question, just one more about the second one. The first one, the 5 free miles on the phone. Maybe it's a question for Cam, I don't even know. How is this policeable and who's going to track it, right? If they call ABC Towing and they call DEF and DEF shows up, like who would know? And who's going to track that? Like, oh man, we called ABC, but somebody else showed up.
The way we've handled it in the past is to call into dispatch on the radio and say, be advised, so-and-so is on scene with us, and they are claiming to be part, instead of the company we called.
I guess you'd report it to the sheriff and.
Right, reports to the sheriff or to the police department, whichever agency is on scene. But we make sure that it's noted in the call so that we can go back and, paperwork to say, if we wanted DEF, we would have called DEF, or, they're not on our rotation.
But those transmissions become a transcript essentially.
Correct. They're recorded audibly and then they're written into the CAD log.
So.
And that's a lot of how we got started with this in the first place is, CAD log would say, we called this company, they declined. We called this company, they didn't answer the phone. And so Lieutenant Johnson and I started working to try and clean up some of that.
Okay.
So Judge, I think to address Mr. Finley's concern, that would be under number 7, where it talks about it requires record services to answer the phone and respond to all types of wrecks when called as a condition of participating in the rotating schedule. Is that what you're saying, that we should amend that? I mean,
Add some stuff after that.
yeah, I mean, to address his concern.
So here's what I've jotted down on my chicken scratch. Any record service participating in this rotation must respond when called and not subcontract the call to another record service. If the record service is unable to respond when called, the sheriff's office or first responder agency shall proceed to the next record service on the list. Sound all right?
Was that the gist of your
So
request?
that at the end of 7. Okay.
But I think there needs to be something added, like, we worked a wreck the other day where my one heavy-duty truck couldn't handle it. We had to put 3 heavy-duty trucks on one semi. So I had to call help. So I had to call another company.
But you're
to
on.
help me.
But you're
I'm
on site.
I'm the head in charge. I'm the one.
I don't think that's a problem.
I don't have any heartburn with that. It's just, if we call Finley's and, somebody from Lawrenceburg shows up without him being there, that's the problem.
That's the problem. But I think
that's exactly what I'm trying.
I think what Cam has suggested would be a potential motion
Does that work
amendment.
for you, what I said, to add that in there? Okay.
Okay.
So I was happy with it beforehand.
Yeah. So
trying to make it a little
I can
better.
take it back out.
instead of county or city limits, you're asking to amend possibly to 5
And
miles.
that's just to make it more clear. It's easy.
Yeah.
The city limits, they change all the time.
Yeah.
Like,
And then what Cam just read, would someone want to make a
Will
motion?
2 changes make that
All right,
substantial?
let me ask about the 5 miles. Is that going to be any wreck? Doesn't matter if it's in the city limits or outside the city limits. It's going to be 5 free miles plus $5 a mile.
yes.
Okay,
So if it's 10 miles, we would just charge for 5.
okay.
Do we have to have another second reading?
Well, I think the summary isn't really altered, so I think we can go forward. I'll put this on the, let me summarize, okay, so I've already read the one, and then the other one would be for any wrecks, and I'll take out which occur outside the city limits. The record service may charge up to $100 with 5 free miles plus $5 a mile from the site of the pickup until the tow is complete.
Yep.
That sound good? All right. So I think we can go forward and I can read the summary.
So those are my major concerns. So.
Well, thank you for being here, and thank you for what you do to help keep the roads clear.
I can pay for it.
So, Cam, do we need to have someone make a motion to amend the?
Yeah, we've done the first reading, so somebody can make the motion to incorporate those 2 changes.
After it's read.
Okay.
Okay.
So, all right, I'll go ahead and read it. Scott County Fiscal Court Ordinance Number 23-08, an ordinance repealing and replacing Ordinance 1303 and establishing updated rotating schedules, policy guidelines, rates, and fees for record services utilized by Scott County, Kentucky. Summary. 1. Repeals and replaces Ordinance Number 1303. 2. Establishes rotating schedules for record services, which will be maintained by the Scott County Sheriff's Office. 3. Gives the sheriff the authority to add or delete record services and the right to remove any record service from the rotating schedule for infractions of the ordinance. 4. Requires the sheriff's office to review record service rates annually. 5. Allows vehicle owners to choose their own record service unless the vehicle is impeding traffic, in which case the applicable first responder agency shall select the first record service available. 6. Outlines rotating schedule procedures for calls to record services. 7. Requires record services to answer the phone and respond to all types of recs when called as a condition of participating in the rotating schedule. 8. Requires records to arrive on scene within 30 minutes and heavy records within 1 hour, considering reasonable conditions. 9. Gives first responders the authority to pursue heavy record services from outside of the rotating schedule if necessary in the event special circumstances such as severe weather events. 10. Requires participating record services to maintain necessary equipment and clean and remove debris from the roadway. 11. Requires participating record services not to remove vehicles until directed to do so and to only collect one vehicle unless special circumstances exist. 12. Requires participating record services to maintain a business license, comply with all commercial driver's license laws, possess liability insurance, be responsible for vehicles stored at their facilities, and consent to inspection of their facilities. 13. Establishes an updated maximum rate schedule, addresses storage fees and mileage fees for wrecks which occur, I'm going to say, instead of which occur outside the city limits, I'll just say for wrecks, as we change that, and addresses special circumstances and heavy record fees. 14. Establishes that the operator of the record service shall be responsible for collecting all fees for services rendered, and that it is not the responsibility of the Scott County Sheriff's Office, the Scott County Fiscal Court, or any entity thereof to collect fees for record services rendered towing vehicles owned by third parties. Any attempts by a record service to collect record service fees owed by vehicle owners from the Sheriff's Office constitute a violation of the ordinance and serve as grounds for removal from the rotating schedule. 15. States that if any section of the ordinance is held invalid, such holding shall not affect the validity of the remaining portions thereof. 16. Takes effect immediately upon passage and publication. The full text of this ordinance is available for examination at the office of the Scott Fiscal Court, Clerk, 101 East Main Street, Georgetown, Kentucky, 40324. Introduced and publicly read for the first time July 14th, 2023. Publicly read the second time July 27th, 2023.
So would there be any questions or comments, and would there be a motion to approve as the two amendments were mentioned? So a motion and a second. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you all.
I'll send you a clean copy.
All right. Now, we're going to move to number 11. I think we have guests that have all point shirts on. Are you, either one of y'all, Mr. Vince West? Okay. So, in conversations by email and phone call, I was going to share what you shared, that you were offering $50 per tower per month, and a term that would expire April of 2027. You also made mention in your agreement that the road department was still receiving services from All Points. Yes. I don't think we're using it anymore. And then you mentioned Sadieville Fire Station, EMS station. Yes. I can't comment on that for 100%. If they're utilizing it, they probably are, maybe. But if you'd like to address the court and answer any questions from the court, I shared, this is a request to update the agreement. I don't have a frame of reference for what broadband providers, what the going rate is for tower location. I do know, and I know it's a different, a totally different ballgame, but, our cell carriers are in the area of 4,000 a month or so. And Mike, would you like to comment on that? Because you can comment on that.
The cell carriers are offering a lot of money, but I'm in favor of the recommendation that All Points came forward with, because they are serving the underserved, providing what others can't get, and people would be hurt by losing their.
Sure. And I told Mr. West that we weren't trying to pay our mortgage
Right.
with this agreement, but I just wanted to make sure we were doing our due diligence and had a good, number. Do you all have contracts with any other county governments or cities?
It's mostly municipal water services, Lawrenceburg, North
That's
Anderson.
it's the same ballpark.
Yeah, more or less.
Is that something you can share with us, like terms?
Not at this time. I don't have that number right in front of me, but
So-
I can get that to you if you.
So
It takes-
if we table this, ask to get more data,
Sure.
would that be a problem until our next meeting?
I don't think so.
So any questions that any court member has, and I agree with what Mike said, we don't want to, like, connectivity is at a premium. We don't want to disrupt that, but we also want to be good stewards of facilities and assets that the county has. So we'll table this and answer any questions. Rob, do you have a question?
Would this open it up to any other carriers wanting to locate on the towers?
I think there's only so much room on those towers, and I don't know if there's any additional room. Mike, you know better than I do.
The towers that we're discussing where All Points is, there is extra room, but I believe that the city of Georgetown is getting ready to do an RFP for vertical real estate on the big towers that are part of our 911 radio system.
Yeah, and these two are not.
They are not.
Yes. So that,
I just didn't want to get in some
bidding
big
war.
bidding war.
Yeah,
How
but
many customers do you all have in Scott County?
In Scott County, gross, approximately, got prepared for this, approximately 160. And as Spectrum, AT&T, any wireline provider, Cincinnati Bell, starts coming through in our area, we lose those customers, understandably. But it's a battle all the time to try and improve the services that we have for the customers that we have.
sure. And I agree totally. We don't want to disconnect anyone. I was just trying to do our due diligence and be.
Certainly.
How many did you say?
160.
Approximately 100.
Are they concentrated or are they scattered throughout?
So we have approximately 60 customers between the two sites the Fiscal Court owns on Burton Pike and on Cincinnati Road. And then there is another site on the Stamping Ground Water Tank. I believe Georgetown Water Service handles that. And then we have a commercial site off of Skinnersburg Road that does approximately another 30 or so customers.
So if you have some agreements with, water providers that own water towers, if you could share with a couple, so we'd have a ballpark, and like I said, we're not trying to pay the mortgage. We're just trying to do our due diligence. And then we could share that information and then hopefully come back and approve an agreement at our next meeting.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. ARPA procurement policy. That is something that we need to do to check a box with just making sure we stay in line with procurement policy for purchases made with the American Rescue Plan Act. And, this is a multi-page document that was shared, and we're not going to read all of it. But What do we need to have a motion just to accept those terms for procurements made with those dollars?
Michelle?
Okay. So that just
Saying if you're spending the money, follow the rules.
correct. So we shared this. It's what we've been doing anyway.
Yeah.
It's reflective of the $40,000.
Change from 30,000.
I got you. That's what they.
All right. Would there be a motion?
So moved.
Second. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next is the general obligation bond statement. I think we just simply need to acknowledge this in the record. And Stacy has that. I do not believe we'll have to make a motion. But the decision of state and local debt officer to approve issuance of general obligation bonds was approved, and this was transmitted on July 18th. And the commissioner and state local debt officer Dennis Keene signed it. So just let the record reflect that took place, and we received that document. And then I'm going to turn it over to Jeff. IT coordinator, new hire, and this is exciting. I think it's much needed position. I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, we had 20 applicants for the position. We interviewed 4 individuals, and we are recommending to you the appointment of Chip Clark as our first IT coordinator. He can begin employment either late in August or early September. The pay for that position would be $80,000 a year. As many of you know, Chip's been working with the Bluegrass Area Development District for over 20 years now, and he's served in a computing role for a number of those years, and he's also provided support to Scott County over that time period too. As a matter of fact, he even helped us with our transition from QX to Office 365.
Helped very much. Dwayne, you want to make a comment about Mr. Clark? You raised your hand.
Make a motion to accept.
All right.
Okay.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I got some questions.
Okay. So we have a motion, we have a second, but we have a question.
So he's an IT coordinator. Does that mean he's going to have people under him? We're going to hire more people?
No.
So he'll be by himself?
We've got one position, and he intentionally was probably the best fit because he can do the grunt work. And like when somebody like Rick's laptop today, we were trying to open up Outlook, can't do it. It just like the shortcut wasn't working. So we went to he and I sat there and we tried to restart and update. Well, heck, it was spinning, and like Chip will come and do those type of that type of help,
And far more.
and far more, helped on this Microsoft Office 365 transition. He'll help us with security issues. He'll help just on a wide range of things. But in feedback from Ricky and feedback from Jeff, Chip is the one that can do this hands-on and relationship stuff, and we might have to have a little help when we need complex networking problems. No, one person's not going to have a magic wand that can answer every question, but he's the type of guy that can do that grunt work. Some of these people that interviewed asked specifically, are you going to hire a tech?
Right.
That's not what we're looking at. We've got one person that's going to be on staff.
Another good thing, Rob, is he knows all of the county facilities. He's been our go-to for a long time.
Doesn't he live here too?
He lives in Scott County, and Stacy's correct. He has worked through Bluegrass Ad, and we pay them a contract hourly rate. When we call Chip, we pay him a contract rate. But with 300 employees, we need somebody here all the time, in my opinion, and this has been a topic that we've talked about for 5 years almost.
He'll
now.
also be helping us from a strategic level, from a purchasing level, from
Making a strategic plan about replacing software, hardware.
disaster recovery. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, it's more than just fixing Outlook on a computer. It's
And then having somebody that checks on.
Big to me, though.
Making
yeah.
sure everything's backed up and all that yada, yada, yada.
So did we compare the salary to somebody else in another county or anything?
we used, yes, Kentucky League of Cities and KY Stats were two examples of other. That's where we looked at some data sets.
And,
Yes.
and 3 of the 4 applicants that we interviewed had salaries over 100,000. David Livingston.
To answer that question about salaries, being in the private industry, that is a bargain.
Yes.
And you know, Chip, like Jeff shared and others have shared, he's been a longtime employee of the Bluegrass Ad, and as he's been there, his responsibilities, like his list of responsibility has grown. And it's just an indicator that he's the type of guy that we need, that's going to be roll his sleeves up and help. And
Being there so long, is there a reason why he's wanting to leave?
I can't answer that. I mean,
I would think one reason would be living in
I don't think
Georgia.
it's relative.
what's that,
Say
David?
what?
It's not relevant.
It's not relative of why he may leave his prior employer.
I just asked a question, David. I don't care if it's relative or not. I asked a question. So
I don't have an answer, but
Well, let me just answer this. We did a reference check and received a very positive reference from his supervisor.
oh, I'm sure he did. I mean, I've
Yeah.
talked to him.
yeah,
I've met him before.
yeah. So we have a motion and we have a second. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you all. Fire Department bid advertisements, Chief John Ward. Sorry, Chief.
Judge Badgers, thank you all. We're just requesting permission to go out for bid on the station bay doors and the,
In the
we have that in our
storage
budget.
building that
In
we've
the-
discussed and
yes,
put in the
storage
budget.
building,
What are the dimensions, just to confirm, our proposed dimensions of the metal building?
It was 40 by 120.
I think that's what I remember.
Yeah.
It's going to have a concrete slab, 40 by 120. It's
Eight bay doors.
8 bay doors, and it's going to be a shell.
Yeah.
So,
Johnny, you bidding that all together, or are you doing the concrete work separate in the building?
We would try to bid that all out
Oh,
together.
gotcha.
Yeah, as a package.
Yeah.
and the only thing I mentioned to John, or one other item is, if we can, when we put the specs on about the color of the, I don't want it to stand out like a sore thumb. If we could have some type of coordinating effort to either, you've got that one outbuilding, metal building, either match that, or can you paint the smaller building in the future?
Yeah, we can.
All right. And the work that you all have done on your training center painting, and I mean, that looks looks so nice and professional. So,
It's looking really good.
Yeah.
There's still work we got to do on it, but yeah, it's coming along.
all right. Questions or comments?
Motion.
We got a motion. We got a second. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Chief. Resolution 2319, CAECO financing lease. Michelle has some comments that are very pertinent to this issue, and this resolution allows us to move forward in the future as well.
Correct.
Not
With-
just this year.
With financing, with vehicle financing through CAECO. Yes,
Right.
it opens up that opportunity. Also, with talking with CAECO,
And then there's a threshold that anything over $500,000, if you exceed that, you have to get approval
To DLG.
and from DLG.
And
Yeah.
have hearings and.
And you have to have hearings, and it lasts
about 60 days is the wait.
60 day, there'll be a 60-day window. If the court wants to consider paying down the balance on those on those vehicles by approximately $179,000.
172.
172,000, then you would not exceed that $500,000 threshold, and this would probably be finalized within a week. So questions or comments for Michelle on that topic?
Is that a recommendation out of
KCO.
reserve for transfer? Is that what you're looking at?
We would
Yes.
we would transfer that out of our reserve.
And I asked Keiko about doing that with the way it seems, and it's a really common practice among counties to do it that way. So.
Any other questions? Well, Cam, that's a nice resolution I see there.
All right. I'll go quick.
Thank you, Michelle.
All right, resolution number 2319. A resolution approving a lease for the financing of a project, providing for the payment and security of the lease, authorizing the execution of various documents related to such lease, and making certain designations regarding such lease. Whereas the governing body of the County of Scott, Kentucky, the lessee, has the power pursuant to section 65.940, etc. of the Kentucky Revised Statutes to enter into lease agreements with or without the option to purchase in order to provide for the use of the property for public purposes. Whereas the governing body of the lessee, the governing body, has previously determined and hereby further determines that the lessee is in need of the project as defined in the lease hereinafter described. And whereas the governing body has determined and hereby determines that it is to be in the best interest of the lessee, and that the lessee enter into a lease agreement or the lease to be administered by the Kentucky Association of Counties Leasing Trust, the program administrator, and funded by the bank or financial institution offering the lowest and best interest rate is selected by the lessee upon the advice of the program administrator or the lessor for the leasing by the lessee from the lessor of the project. Now therefore be it resolved by the Fiscal Court of the County of Scott, Kentucky as follows. Section 1, recitals and authorization. The lessee hereby approves the lease agreement or the lease and all collateral documents to the extent defined and identified in the lease, each in substantially the form presented to this governing body. It is hereby found and determined that the project identified in the lease is public property to be used for public purposes. It is further determined that it is necessary and desirable and in the best interest of the lessee to enter into the lease for the purposes therein specified in the execution and delivery of the lease, and all representations, certifications, and other matters contained in the closing memorandum with respect to the lease, whereas may be required by the lessor prior to the delivery of the lease, are hereby approved, ratified, and confirmed. The judge executive and the fiscal court clerk of the lessee are hereby authorized to execute the lease together with such other agreements or certifications which may be necessary to accomplish the transaction contemplated by the lease. Section 2, administration of the lease. Kentucky Association of Counties Leasing Trust is hereby acknowledged to be the program administrator under the lease. Section 3, severability. If any section, paragraph, or provision of this resolution shall be held to be invalid or unenforceable for any reason, the invalidity or unenforceability of such section, paragraph, or provision shall not affect any of the remaining provisions of this resolution. Section 4, open meetings law. This governing body hereby finds and determines that all formal actions relative to the adoption of this resolution were taken in an open meeting of this governing body, and that all deliberations of this governing body and of its committees, if any, which resulted in formal action were in open meetings open to the public in full compliance with applicable legal requirements. Section 5, conflicts. All ordinances, resolutions, orders, or parts thereof in conflict with the provisions of this resolution are, to the extent of such conflict, hereby repealed, and the provisions of this resolution shall prevail and be given effect. Section 6, effective date. This resolution shall take effect from and after its passage and publication and summary thereof as provided by law. Introduced, seconded, and adopted at a duly convened meeting of the governing body held today, July 27, 2023.
Questions or comments? Would there be a motion to accept? Motion. Second.
Question, should this motion also include the payment of the difference?
Well, what I was gonna say is we approve the resolution, and then someone make a motion to approve the $172,000.
Okay. Who did this?
I made the motion.
I'm sorry?
I have that exact number.
Okay, so
Who seconded? I'm sorry.
second from Mr. Ryan Pratt. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Now, would there be a motion to approve the amount Michelle's going to approve or share?
It's $172,705.56.
So that would be paid from reserve
Yes.
for transfer. Motion from Mr. Dwayne Ellison, I believe. Would there be a second? Second from Mr. Ryan Pratt. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Now, I just want to share new business, and Dwayne and David, I will get these to you tomorrow, but the hard copies of the report of the 2023 Scott County Reapportionment Commission were shared with me and lodged for the record on 7/20/23. And the timeline is next Friday. We will have a discussion, presentation of the report from the commission, and magistrates will be able to ask questions. And I've invited the commission and our county clerk to come. I've also invited Whitley from Planning and Zoning, and she will be here. And she'll hook her computer to our mobile monitor, and we'll move that up where if you all want something blown up a little bit bigger and you want to have a question specifically, we can do that. She can use that software. And then I will ask her this week if that if there's anything you're going to do everything you can to be a good steward of tax dollars.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. With that said, we need to go into executive session, KRS 61810-1F, KRS 61810-1B. Would there be a motion to go? Rick Hostetler, is that a second for you, Mr. Jones? Second for Mr. Jones. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right. John Ward, you go to Dark? We went to Christmas party one year, like, it was dark. The big ones got there. That's all, you know,
Glad you're back, bro. I thought I seen the van out. Good service.
You gotta wait.